Have you ever woken up on a quiet morning, gazed out the window, and wondered, has my life been truly fulfilling? The first rays of a new day seep through the curtains, their gentle light a reminder that every day is a precious gift. Eleanor Grace, a 68-year-old woman, had spent her life exploring the meaning of that question. Her journey was not a path lined with roses, but a blend of simple moments and profound lessons gleaned from life's challenges. This morning, Eleanor woke up as she always did. With a gentle smile, she swung her legs off the bed, her feet meeting the warm wooden floor. Beside her bed, a small notebook lay open, waiting for her to jot down 3 things she was grateful for today. The light of dawn, she wrote, the sound of birds chirping in the garden, and the strength I feel in my body. She settled onto a small cushion near the window, closed her eyes, and took a deep breath. Each inhale was a reminder that she was alive, with the opportunity to love, learn, and savor life. Today will be a good day, she whispered to herself, and a new journey began. Part 1. Morning routine, setting the stage for a graceful day. Eleanor Grace stirred awake as the first sliver of sunlight crept into her bedroom, illuminating the soft lace curtains that adorned her window. The morning was quiet, serene, and unhurried, the kind of morning that welcomed reflection rather than a rush. There was no shrill alarm clock demanding she rise. Instead, the sweet symphony of birds chirping outside acted as her natural wake-up call. She opened her eyes slowly, taking a moment to simply exist, her chest rising and falling in rhythm with her breath. With practiced ease, Eleanor swung her legs over the side of the bed, her feet finding the cool wood floor. It was the small things she had come to appreciate, how the texture of the floor felt grounding, how her body, though slower than it once was, still carried her with grace. Beside her bed rested a small notebook, its corners slightly worn. This was her gratitude journal, a companion of many years. She reached for it, her movements deliberate and unhurried. With a pen in hand, Eleanor wrote the first 3 things that came to mind. The warmth of sunlight on my skin, she began. Next, the laughter of my grandchildren, even if it's only through video calls. Finally, she added, the smell of freshly brewed coffee. These were her anchors, small joys tethering her to the present moment. Sliding out of bed fully, Eleanor walked to the window and knelt on a soft cushion placed perfectly in the corner of the room. From here, she had a clear view of her garden, a mix of vibrant flowers and towering trees that swayed gently in the breeze. Closing her eyes, she took a deep breath, then another. Her 10-minute meditation practice had become a non-negotiable part of her mornings. It wasn't about emptying her mind, but simply letting her thoughts settle, like sediment sinking to the bottom of a still lake. When she opened her eyes again, she felt lighter, as though her burdens had been rearranged into manageable shapes. Eleanor whispered her daily affirmations, each word carrying weight and intention. I am healthy. I am strong. I am grateful. With a soft smile, she rolled out her yoga mat. The motions of her body as she flowed through gentle stretches felt familiar, like reconnecting with an old friend. Her favorite pose, child's pose, grounded her while downward dog stretched her spine in ways that reminded her of her youth. Yoga wasn't about achieving perfection, but about listening to her body and honoring what it needed. By the time Eleanor made her way to the kitchen, the world outside was fully awake. Birds fluttered between the trees, and the hum of distant activity reminded her of the life continuing all around her. Breakfast, for Eleanor, was more than a meal, it was a ritual. She arranged an array of ingredients on her countertop, a vibrant smoothie bowl adorned with chia seeds, walnuts, and slices of bright orange mango. Each ingredient was chosen with care, not just for its taste, but for the nourishment it provided her body. As she sat by the window with her breakfast, Eleanor's journal lay open beside her. She added a note to herself. Today is another chance to learn, to grow, to be. Between bites, she took a moment to savor the richness of the flavors and the calmness of the moment. This was a sacred space in her day, a time where the demands of the world fell silent. There was something magical about beginning the day with gratitude and intention. It shaped her mood, guided her actions, and reminded her of the beauty in even the simplest routines. Eleanor believed that mornings were the foundation of the day, a chance to set the tone for everything to come. It was less about productivity and more about creating an internal sense of peace and purpose. By the time she stepped outside to water the garden, Eleanor felt ready. The day stretched ahead of her, filled with possibilities she hadn't yet imagined but was eager to embrace. And she carried with her the quiet strength of a morning well spent, a reminder that grace begins not in the grand gestures but in the small, intentional choices we make for ourselves. Wouldn't it be wonderful if every morning could feel like this? A blend of gratitude, mindfulness, and gentle preparation? Eleanor liked to think it was possible for anyone, if only they made the choice to pause, breathe, and begin. Part 2. Active living, maintaining mobility and strength. Eleanor slipped on her walking shoes, their worn soles evidence of countless morning strolls. The air outside was crisp and inviting, carrying the faint scent of dewy grass. As she closed the gate to her front yard, she spotted Martha waiting for her at the park entrance, a familiar silhouette wrapped in a light scarf. Martha waved enthusiastically, her smile as warm as the sunlight streaming through the trees. Their walk began as it always did, with easy conversation that ebbed and flowed like the rhythm of their steps. Martha recounted a phone call with her grandson, who had just discovered a passion for dinosaurs, while Eleanor shared a funny moment from her latest attempt at calligraphy. The simplicity of these exchanges held a special kind of magic, reminding them both of the joys that came from paying attention to life's quieter moments. The path through the park wound around a small pond, its surface rippling gently in the breeze. Ducks paddled lazily, their movements mirroring the unhurried pace of Eleanor and Martha. Every now and then, they paused to take in the scenery, a squirrel darting up a tree, a patch of wildflowers swaying in the wind. These walks were not just exercise, they were therapy, a way to connect with nature and with each other. As they rounded the final stretch of their loop, Martha reached into her pocket and pulled out a small notebook. "Have you read this one yet?" she asked, showing Eleanor a list of book titles she had recently compiled. It wasn't unusual for their walks to turn into impromptu book club meetings. They debated plot twists, praised compelling characters, and shared their growing admiration for authors who could transport them to another world. By the time they parted ways, their hearts felt as light as their steps. Eleanor continued on to the community center, a bright building bustling with activity. The strength training class she attended had become a fixture in her weekly routine, not only for its physical benefits but for the sense of community it provided. She walked into the room to a chorus of cheerful greetings from familiar faces. The instructor, a lively woman in her 40s, welcomed them with the enthusiasm of someone who genuinely loved her work. The session began with light weights, the kind Eleanor could lift comfortably but with enough challenge to feel her muscles engage. Each movement was purposeful, a bicep curl here, a squat there. The instructor explained the importance of maintaining muscle mass, especially as they aged. "Strong bodies lead to strong minds," she said, her voice echoing in the room. Eleanor couldn't agree more. Each rep felt like an investment in her future, a promise to herself that she would remain capable and independent for as long as possible. What Eleanor loved most about these classes was the camaraderie. They encouraged each other with smiles and words of motivation, celebrating small victories like completing an extra set or mastering a new exercise. Laughter punctuated their efforts, turning what could have been mundane into something energizing and fun. By the time they moved to the cool-down stretches, the room was filled with a sense of accomplishment that was almost tangible. The day's final activity was a Tai Chi session held in the community center's garden. Eleanor had initially been skeptical about Tai Chi, unsure if the slow, deliberate movements were enough to count as exercise. But over time, she had grown to appreciate its grace and depth. The instructor, a serene man with a calming presence, guided them through a series of movements that mimicked the flow of water. Eleanor felt her body relax as she followed his lead, her arms gliding through the air with a rhythm that felt almost meditative. Tai Chi wasn't about strength or speed, it was about balance, both physical and mental. As she moved, she became acutely aware of the connection between her breath and her body, between her mind and the present moment. The stresses of the day melted away, leaving only a quiet sense of peace. When the session ended, Eleanor lingered in the garden for a moment, soaking in the tranquility. The sun had begun its slow descent, casting a golden glow over the flowers and trees. She took a deep breath, feeling grateful for the way her body had carried her through the day. Each step, each movement, had been a celebration of what she could still do. It struck her then how important it was to stay active, not just for the sake of health, but for the joy it brought to her life. The walks with Martha, the laughter in the strength training class, the stillness of Tai Chi, all of it reminded her that movement was more than physical. It was a way of staying connected to herself, to others, and to the world around her. As Eleanor made her way home, she thought about how lucky she was to have these routines. They weren't just habits. They were gifts she gave herself, small yet powerful reminders of her strength and resilience. She couldn't help but wonder how many others had yet to discover the simple joys of staying active. Perhaps, she mused, all it took was one step, one small choice, to open the door to a more vibrant life. Part 3. Nourishing the body and mind, fueling for longevity. Eleanor placed her lunch on the table, taking a moment to admire the colors on her plate. A vibrant salad spilled over the edges of the bowl, brimming with leafy greens, roasted carrots, and cherry tomatoes that glistened like tiny jewels. Slices of perfectly grilled salmon lay atop the vegetables, their edges lightly caramelized. It wasn't just a meal. It was a reflection of her commitment to taking care of herself. She reached for her glass of water, infused with slices of fresh cucumber and sprigs of mint, a concoction she had come to love for its refreshing taste. As she took her first sip, Eleanor felt a wave of gratitude, not only for the nourishment in front of her, but for the ability to enjoy it fully. She thought about the care she had put into preparing this meal, from selecting the ingredients at the farmer's market to arranging them on the plate. It was a small act, but one that reminded her of the importance of treating her body with respect and kindness. Eleanor ate slowly, savoring each bite. She had learned over the years that food was more than just fuel. It was an opportunity to connect with the present moment. The crunch of the greens, the smoky sweetness of the roasted vegetables, the delicate flakiness of the salmon. Each texture and flavor told a story of the earth's abundance. She let herself be fully present, appreciating the care that had gone into bringing this meal to her table. After lunch, Eleanor cleared her plate and moved to the sunlit corner of her living room, where her favorite armchair awaited. On the small side table lay a historical novel she had recently started. Its pages were filled with tales of courage and adventure, set in a time when the world seemed both simpler and more perilous. Eleanor opened the book and was instantly transported. The protagonist, a young woman navigating the challenges of life in the 19th century, reminded Eleanor of her grandmother, a resilient woman who had faced her own share of trials. As the story unfolded, Eleanor found herself drawn deeper into its world. She could almost hear the rustling of fabric, smell the faint aroma of wood smoke in the air, and feel the weight of the characters' choices. It amazed her how books had the power to bridge time and space, allowing her to experience lives so different from her own. Inspired by the story, Eleanor felt a sudden urge to dig into her own family history. She retrieved a box of old photographs and letters from a nearby shelf, setting them out on the dining table. As she sorted through the faded images, she felt a connection to the people who had come before her, her great-grandparents, with their stern expressions and formal clothing, her parents, smiling shyly in a photo from their wedding day. Each picture was a window into the past, a reminder of the stories that had shaped her family's journey. Among the photos, she found a handwritten letter from her grandfather. Dated 1943, the paper was yellowed with age, the ink slightly smudged, but the words were clear. A message of hope sent from across the ocean during a time of war. Eleanor read it aloud, her voice soft but steady, and felt a profound sense of gratitude for the resilience and love that had carried her family through difficult times. It was humbling to realize that the strength she admired in those who came before her also lived within her. Later in the afternoon, Eleanor decided to spend some time practicing calligraphy, a skill she had recently taken up. She spread out her materials on the kitchen table, smooth sheets of paper, bottles of ink in varying shades, and a set of elegant pens. Calligraphy was a challenge, but one she had come to enjoy. There was something meditative about the way the ink flowed across the page, the deliberate movements required to create each curve and line. As she worked, Eleanor found herself absorbed in the process. The world outside faded away, leaving only the quiet rhythm of her hand guiding the pen. Her strokes weren't perfect, but they held a certain charm, a testament to her dedication and willingness to learn. Each letter she created felt like a small triumph, a reminder that growth was always possible. No matter her age, Eleanor had always believed that learning wasn't just for the young. It was a lifelong endeavor, one that kept the mind sharp and the spirit engaged. Calligraphy had become a way for her to embrace this belief, a tangible proof that it was never too late to try something new. As she completed a practice sheet filled with flowing words, she couldn't help but smile. The beauty of calligraphy lay not in achieving perfection, but in the joy of creating. The sun began to dip lower in the sky, casting a warm glow over the room. Eleanor leaned back in her chair, her fingers slightly smudged with ink, and felt a deep sense of contentment. The day had been filled with moments of nourishment, not just for her body, but for her mind and soul. The meal she had prepared, the stories she had explored, the letters she had written in elegant strokes, all of it reminded her of the richness life still held. As she sat in the fading light, Eleanor thought about how easy it was to overlook these small acts of care and curiosity. Yet, they were the foundation of a meaningful life. Taking the time to nourish herself, both physically and mentally, was a way of honoring the gift of each day. It was a quiet but powerful reminder that the journey of aging gracefully wasn't just about staying healthy. It was about staying engaged, curious, and open to the world's endless possibilities. And as she gazed out the window at the evening sky, Eleanor couldn't help but wonder what new stories tomorrow might bring. Part 4. Cultivating Inner Peace, Finding Harmony in Later Life. The evening had always been Eleanor's favorite time of day. As the sun dipped lower on the horizon, casting the garden in hues of amber and rose, she found solace in the quiet moments that followed. Tonight, like so many others, she carried a steaming cup of chamomile tea out to the wooden bench beneath her favorite magnolia tree. The air was fragrant with the soft, floral notes of jasmine, and the rhythmic rustling of leaves in the breeze created a natural symphony. Eleanor sat down, cupping her mug in both hands, and allowed herself to simply be. She closed her eyes, taking slow, measured breaths, her body relaxing into the rhythm of the evening. Mindfulness had not always come naturally to her. For years, she had moved through life at a breakneck pace, juggling work, family, and the endless demands of modern living. But in these later years, she had learned the value of slowing down. Sitting here, she felt each breath as it entered and left her body, a gentle reminder of life's simplest gift. When she opened her eyes, she allowed them to wander across the garden. The lavender she had planted last spring swayed gently in the breeze, its purple blooms vibrant against the darkening sky. A single firefly blinked in the distance, its tiny light a spark of magic in the growing dusk. Eleanor smiled at the thought of her granddaughter's recent fascination with fireflies. "They're like nature's little lanterns," the girl had said, her voice filled with wonder. It was time for their evening call. Eleanor retrieved her phone, a sleek device she had grown comfortable using thanks to her granddaughter's patient tutorials. The familiar ringtone barely had time to finish before a cheerful voice greeted her. "Hi, Grandma." Her granddaughter's enthusiasm was infectious, and Eleanor couldn't help but laugh. Their conversation meandered through the small, delightful moments of a young girl's life. An art project she was particularly proud of, a new friend she had made at school, and her ongoing quest to teach the family dog a new trick. Eleanor listened intently, her heart swelling with love and pride. Though miles separated them, these calls made her feel as if they were sitting side by side. After they said their goodbyes, Eleanor lingered on the bench, replaying snippets of their conversation in her mind. The connection they shared was precious, a bond that bridged generations and reminded her of the enduring power of love. Relationships, she realized, were the cornerstone of a fulfilling life. They didn't require grand gestures or perfect circumstances, only presence, patience, and genuine care. The garden had grown darker now, the first stars beginning to punctuate the sky. Eleanor's thoughts turned to her book club, which was meeting later this week. The group had started as a small gathering of acquaintances, but over the years, it had evolved into a close-knit circle of friends. They shared more than just books. They shared stories, laughter, and the occasional tear. This week, they were discussing a novel that delved into themes of resilience and redemption, topics that resonated deeply with Eleanor. The lively debates and heartfelt exchanges at these meetings were more than just enjoyable. They were intellectually invigorating. Eleanor loved how her friends brought different perspectives to the table, challenging her to see the world through new eyes. These discussions kept her mind sharp and her spirit engaged, proving that learning and growth had no expiration date. As the night deepened, Eleanor returned indoors, the warmth of her home enveloping her like a familiar embrace. She prepared for bed with the same care she gave to her morning routine, treating it as a time to unwind and reflect. After washing her face and brushing her teeth, she slipped into her favorite robe and settled into bed with her gratitude journal. Flipping open its well-worn pages, she began to write. "Today, I am grateful for the laughter of my granddaughter, the beauty of my garden, and the anticipation of a meaningful conversation with my book club." The act of writing these words brought a sense of closure to the day, as if she were tying a ribbon around its many moments, both big and small. Eleanor set the journal aside and turned off the bedside lamp. In the soft glow of the moonlight streaming through her window, she lay still, her mind quiet but her heart full. She thought about the journey of the day, how it had unfolded with intention, balance, and joy. Each moment, from the morning's meditation to the evening's quiet reflection, had been a thread in the fabric of a life well lived. As she drifted toward sleep, Eleanor carried with her the quiet certainty that aging was not a decline but an evolution. It was a chance to deepen relationships, embrace simplicity, and savor the richness of every moment. And in the stillness of the night, she wondered, what stories would tomorrow hold? What new joys and lessons would the rising sun bring? The thought filled her with a gentle sense of anticipation, a reminder that the art of living gracefully was, at its core, a daily practice. Part 5. Leaving a legacy, living a life worth remembering. Eleanor sat at her writing desk, a sturdy piece of oak furniture that had weathered decades of use, its surface polished smooth by years of letters, journals, and stories. The late afternoon light spilled through the window, illuminating a small stack of cream-colored stationery and her favorite fountain pen, a gift from her late husband. Today, she had set aside time to write letters to her grandchildren, little pieces of her heart she hoped would one day guide them when she was no longer there to do so herself. The first letter was addressed to Clara, her eldest granddaughter, who had just started college. Eleanor imagined her sitting in a bustling library, her curly hair pulled back in concentration as she pored over textbooks. "Dear Clara," she wrote, the pen gliding smoothly over the page. "Remember, the most important lessons aren't found in books, but in how you treat others and yourself. Be kind, be curious, and never underestimate the power of a good laugh." Her thoughts turned to Jack, her youngest grandson, whose boundless energy often left her in stitches. In his letter, she described her favorite memories of playing tag with him in the backyard and shared a nugget of advice. "Cherish that enthusiasm, Jack. The world will try to tame it, but don't let it. Your energy is a gift. Use it to light up the lives of those around you." Eleanor knew these letters wouldn't solve every challenge her grandchildren might face, but she hoped they would serve as a touchstone, a reminder of the love and wisdom that would always be theirs to draw upon. As she sealed the envelopes, she felt a quiet satisfaction, a sense that she was leaving behind something meaningful, not grand gestures or material wealth, but words that carried her essence. Later, Eleanor made her way to the local library, a place she had come to see as a second home. The librarian greeted her warmly, handing her a stack of books she had requested for the children's reading group she led every Thursday afternoon. The group had started small, just a handful of kids from the neighborhood, but it had grown over the years into a lively gathering of eager young minds. Eleanor loved seeing their faces light up as they discovered new worlds within the pages of a book. This week, they were reading a classic adventure story, one that had captivated Eleanor as a child. As she read aloud to the group, her voice animated and full of emotion, she saw the children's eyes widen with excitement. When she paused to ask questions, their hands shot up, each eager to share their thoughts. These moments reminded Eleanor of the enduring power of stories, not just to entertain, but to teach, inspire, and connect. After the session, a shy boy named Max lingered behind. He hesitated for a moment before asking, "Do you think I could write a story like that someday?" Eleanor knelt to his level, looking him squarely in the eyes. "Max," she said, her voice steady and encouraging, "I don't just think you could. I know you can. Start with one sentence, and let your imagination do the rest." As she walked home, Eleanor thought about Max's question and the quiet determination in his eyes. Mentoring these children had become one of the most fulfilling parts of her life. It wasn't about accolades or recognition, it was about planting seeds, helping them see their potential, and watching them grow. In many ways, it felt like she was giving back to the world that had given her so much. Eleanor's home was a gallery of memories. Photo albums lined the shelves, their pages filled with images of birthdays, vacations, and candid moments that captured the spirit of her family's journey. Framed photographs adorned the walls, her wedding day, her children's graduations, her grandchildren's first steps. Each one was a testament to a life rich with love and shared experiences. One evening, as she flipped through an old album, Eleanor came across a black and white photograph of herself as a young woman, standing in front of a tiny apartment with her husband. They had been newlyweds then, full of dreams and a stubborn optimism that carried them through the lean years. She traced the edges of the photo with her fingertips, marveling at how far they had come. It was in moments like these that Eleanor realized her legacy wasn't about grand achievements or tangible possessions. It was about the values she had lived by, the love she had given, and the connections she had nurtured. Her legacy was her laughter echoing in her grandchildren's hearts, her wisdom embedded in the lives she had touched, and her stories passed down through the generations. As the day drew to a close, Eleanor prepared for bed with her usual sense of gratitude. She wrote in her journal, listing 3 things that had brought her joy that day: the letters she had written, the children's enthusiasm at the library, and the quiet peace of her home. Setting the journal aside, she turned off the lamp and lay back against her pillow. In the stillness of the night, Eleanor reflected on her life with a profound sense of fulfillment. She had faced her share of challenges, weathered losses, and embraced changes, but through it all, she had lived with intention, grace, and a deep appreciation for the beauty of the everyday. Aging, she had learned, wasn't about holding on to the past but about finding ways to give meaning to the present and the future. As sleep began to overtake her, Eleanor's thoughts lingered on the generations who would follow her. She wondered what kind of world they would inherit and what role her small contributions might play in shaping it. The thought didn't trouble her. It inspired her. Life, after all, was not a sprint but a relay, and she had done her part to pass the baton. Her final thought before drifting off was simple yet profound. What else could she do tomorrow to ensure the love and lessons she had gathered would ripple outward, touching lives she might never see? It was a question that filled her with hope, a reminder that even as the years turned, there was always room to leave the world a little brighter than she had found it. As night fell, Eleanor sat in her garden. A gentle breeze carried the scent of jasmine, caressing her hair. In her hands, she held a warm cup of herbal tea, listening to the rustle of leaves like a soft melody, lulling her into reflection. She thought about the day that had passed, a day filled with simple yet profound moments. The letters she had written to her grandchildren were neatly folded and placed on the table, gifts for the future. Inside them were stories of her life, the lessons she had learned, and hopes that the next generations would find meaning in their own journeys. Life, she thought, isn't about what we achieve, but how we live and love. Eleanor felt content. Each passing day not only aged her but deepened her experience, making her life richer and fuller. Before going to sleep, she wrote one final line in her journal. "Today, I lived fully." She set the journal aside and looked up at the ceiling, wondering, what will I do tomorrow to make my life a legacy worth remembering? It was a gentle yet powerful question, leaving an echo in her mind like an invitation for others to ponder. The story doesn't end here. It is a gentle reminder that no matter your age, tomorrow is always an opportunity to begin living with all the love and meaning you can muster. So, what will you choose to make tomorrow truly memorable?